Gotta get below deck. Head for the armor.
The mess hall's locked, sir. We'll have to head for the stern. Jack, you keep back and look after Officer Winter. I'll make sure the infirmary's clear. This way. Shut the doors behind you.
Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I became a Deep One. Truth be told, it wasn't my choice. But if I had a choice, would I become a Deep One? Let's find out. For those of you unfamiliar with the Shadow Over Innsmouth, firstly, what are you doing?
Stop it. Get some help.
Go read it. It's a must read for everyone. And I'm not joking, I'm going to have to spoil the ending of that story to make this video. Alright? Alright. The story tells of a man, Robert Olmsted, who goes to the small New England town called Innsmouth to find the locals have been genetically mixed with a race of fish people called Deep Ones via lots and lots of interspecies erotica. They try to capture him, but he escapes, only to find out that he didn't really escape. He was born with their genetics and will soon eventually turn into a Deep One too, unless he takes another way out. You can take this weird tale by Lovecraft to be an analogy for madness. For example, some mental diseases can be genetic and passed on to later generations. Lovecraft may have feared this as both his parents ended up in mental health clinics for different reasons. Or it can be an analogy for race mixing, something of which Lovecraft was not too fond. For example, you could be a strapping young European lad sitting on the bus contemplating the vile tentacles of modernity and how to preserve one's culture, but then you see a thick Latina in tight cut-off jeans enter the bus and take a seat opposite of you, and as you wipe the sweat off your forehead, you pray that Lovecraft forgives your wandering eyes. Howard, don't judge too harshly. You succumb to the power of Khazar milkers after all. The purpose of this video is to address the conundrum faced by Robert Olmsted, the protagonist of The Shadow Over Innsmouth. You faced the horrors of Innsmouth and survived, but it turns out you're going to turn into a Deep One. What do you do? Obviously, this question is a black and white one. Unless you end yourself, you will become a Deep One. There's no cure, there's no way around it, no medicine to halt the process. It's hard-coded into your very DNA that you will turn. So let's weigh the two options. Option A, you end your life via suicide. And as Lovecraft was a stout atheist, or at least an agnostic, and never wrote of any heaven or hell awaiting his characters, this choice basically just means you're gone forever. In existence. There's literally no other way to avoid the change, and this troubling situation is one we commonly see in vampire and zombie media. If you're bitten by a vampire or a zombie, you're going to change, typically. Except this is even more extreme in that there is no cure or magic to turn you back, as it can be sometimes in vampire, zombie, and I guess werewolf media. It's not a virus introduced into a human body via a bite or anything like that. The body already contains that which is needed to change it in time. So that's that. Option B is that you let the genetic changes take place in you until you go from a normal human in appearance to that of a Deep One. It was mentioned in the story that the changes tend to start in late youth, and then by middle age they fully take effect. It's also stated that in some cases one won't change fully enough to enter the water permanently, leaving you in a sort of genetic limbo, but let's ignore this case for the sake of this video. As a Deep One, you will gain immortality, barring death via violent causes of course, but lose your humanity in the process. You'll never be able to change back, though you will be able to go on land for short spells. If you're thinking, well, it will still be me, my mind and soul, but in this weird fishy body, I would say that's probably not in line with what happens. I'd assume that as you change physically, your brain would change too, as it is a physical part of you, not to mention the hormones in your body. Changes in hormones and the brain's chemistry change how you think and feel. It's stated in the story that you would not become a mindless drone like a zombie or something like that either. You would still maintain your identity and sense of self, even if it is somewhat altered. So if you start out as John Smith as a human, you'll still recognize that, hey, I'm John Smith now as a Deep One, but maybe you'll change your name as it is seen in the story. Referring back to the story, we see Robert Olmsted's mindset change dramatically. He goes from fainting just at the sight of the Deep Ones on land, and fainting at the very confirmation that his ancestors are indeed Deep Ones, to being actually enthusiastic at the change, and looking forward to sticking his middle finger to humanity and becoming fully changed. But with a change, you'd have to say goodbye to everything in your life. Those not of your blood, for example, your wife or husband, girlfriend or boyfriend, your friends, they couldn't follow you. nor could anyone who's not really sharing your blood, and even then it's not guaranteed they'd come with you. As we see in the story, The Shadow of Innsmouth, some of those who do have the Innsmouth look, as it is called for those who have the genetic code of the Deep Ones, they end up killing themselves anyway. All the things that you value and love in life would be gone, to be replaced with who knows what's down there in the Stygian depths of the ocean. And that's the thing, it's stated in the story by the character Zadok Allen that sometimes those who would change eventually do go down before the full change for trial periods. But for the protagonist of the story, he doesn't do this, and it's in his shoes that I'm placing you for this question. You have no clues as to what's awaiting you, and this ties in nicely with Lovecraft's correct belief that the greatest emotion is fear, and the greatest fear is fear of the unknown. Well, you'd have a fraction of a clue actually. The esoteric order of Dagon, the cult that we see in the story, makes clear that its allegiances are not being tied with humanity, though to an outsider it would appear to just be some weird cult. Let's cheat a little bit and look at things with full knowledge. The Deep Ones worship the Mother Hydra and the Father Dagon. Who or what these entities are isn't so clear. I've heard theories that they are merely really old and powerful Deep Ones. I recall a video by Sandy Peterson, I think it was this one, where he states that the Deep Ones do not stop growing. So perhaps, as it is in various hierarchies of social animals, that the oldest and the strongest become the rulers. Becoming a Deep One would entail that you have to worship these entities. Would you be okay with this? If you, the viewer, are a Christian or a Hindu or a Muslim or whatever, and then you end up having to worship these entities, would that sit okay with you? I know that I, as an agnostic with a little bit of a libertarian streak, would not really take kindly to blindly worshipping anything. If you're like me, well, what would you do? You're sitting in that same position. Are you going to worship something for eternity? Then you've got immortality. Theoretically, as a Deep One, you'll live forever, unless some Japanese fisherman catches you and puts you up as some sort of exotic new sashimi, of course. You'll see eventually the human world, which you were a part of once, die, and it's not going to die very nicely. In Lovecraft's tale, a very grim and horrific future awaits humanity. So, now that I've laid out the situation to you, what will you do? If faced with the inevitable fate of becoming a Deep One and having to live beneath the waves with other Deep Ones, would you accept this fate, or would you end your life? The question itself highlights the whole point of Cosmism, the philosophy created by Lovecraft. The question undermines your entire understanding of yourself, of life, your species, and belittles humanity and the idea that we are in charge of anything much on this planet. So, what's your answer? And what's your rationale for your decision? Let me know in the comment section. I'm sure everyone's going to have an opinion on this one. Before I bid you all farewell, I'd like to ask that you check out the links in this video's description. I'm now on Twitter, that cesspool of the internet, as well as Gab, and have a bunch of links where you can see my content on other platforms, and if you're feeling generous, show some support to the channel. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Thanks for watching, and see you in the comment section. Cheers.